Hi, and welcome to episode number 5. In this episode, we're going to install and configure the ASMlib to support Oracle 19. Before we actually boot our VM, we're going to go ahead and create another 8 gig piece of storage for that ASMlib. So we're going to go to our controller in settings, and we're going to hit plus, and we're going to go to create. We're going to call this underscore ASM1. We're going to make this only 8 gigabytes. We're just going to create one to foster the installation of Oracle Grid. 8 gig, fixed size, create, and looks like we're good. We're going to choose it. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So let's go ahead and say OK, and let's boot up our VM. And we can see it starting. 3, 2, 1, go. Almost done. And we're fully booted. So we're going to log in with our putty session again as user root. Password R, df-h. We can still see our 2 file systems mounted. fdisk-l, we should have a new one that's 8 gigabytes and not allocated. So 268, 108, 33, 38, 18 is our swap, and here it is. So SDF is coming in as our new 8 gig disk. So we'll just make a note of that. We're not going to use it now. We just wanted it allocated. So we're going to go ahead and start with the Oracle database pre-install. And again, generally before I do any yum commands, I like to do a yum list. And of course the GUI has got a process running. Oh, no, we want to list first. List. And once that completes, then we'll go ahead and say do the Oracle 19C pre-install. It's running again. 289. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to say yes to this. And at the tail end of this, it does seem to spin on its own for a few minutes. So I'll go ahead and fast forward as we get through this. And here's where it seems to set for a few minutes at cleanup. So I'll go ahead and pause and resume as soon as it starts going again. Oh, it's done. How about that? So the pre-install wasn't the one. I guess it's the Oracle ASM that's going to get us. So let's first search for Oracle ASM. Okay, so there's two of them. So we'll do the first one. And we'll let this go for a second. Hope there's no background noise. Someone's watching television in the other room kind of loud. So it's thinking about it. Okay, it's moving along. And it's going to ask us if that's what we want. We're going to say yes. So it doesn't look like a lot, 155 meg. So the download's happening pretty quick. And we're running the transaction test. Now it's updating. Okay, now here's where it seems to sit for a little bit. So just be patient and it'll eventually return back to you. Okay, so it came on back and finished. So we're good with that. So that was Oracle ASM. Now we're going to install the Oracle ASM support package. Both are required on Enterprise Linux 7. So let's go ahead and hit that one. And only one package. It's pretty small, so we'll go ahead and fire it, and that's pretty quick. So now we'll configure the Oracle ASM driver. And again, it's user sbin Oracle ASM configure-I for interactive. And it's going to ask us some questions. So we're going to say Oracle. It wants to know the default group. We're going to say oinstall. And yes on boot. Yes to scan for disks on boot. And we're golden. Okay, so the next command actually starts it. And the next command, because we didn't boot up. And this one will actually scan for disks, but it's not going to find any because we don't have any configured. Okay, so right here we're just about ready for a shutdown. The next thing we're going to do before we shut down is download the Oracle binaries before we clone. Now to do that, we're going to go ahead and use VNC and just download it directly into the VM. We could also download it onto our desktop and then SCP copy it into the VM. Either one works. Oracle 1 is our VNC password. And let me pull the VNC screen over. Disk space, one new notification. It's probably going to be yelling at us about boot. Okay, so now it wants our password. Oh, okay. So, because we made boot so small, it installed a new kernel when we did the Oracle ASM. That's why it's warning us about space. So if we do any more upgrades, we want to exclude kernel. So we're just going to say ignore on that. We go to Applications and Firefox. Okay, so Firefox did take a minute to come up, because it's got some housekeeping to do, set up directories and so on. So we're going to go into technet at oracle.com. And hang on. Sorry about that. Spam hitting my cell phone. Okay, so we're going to look at database 19C, Enterprise and Standard editions. Okay, so we want, so it looks like we can do 19.3 or 19.5 or 12. 12 release 1, 11 still available for download. How about that? Okay, so we'll just go to 19.3 up here, and we'll take this see all. Okay, that's the database, and that's the infrastructure, global service manager, gateways, examples, and client. So, for good measure, we'll take the client, what is it, 19.3, oh, that's a 32-bit client, client home, so we'll just take this one, put a check in the box and say download, and I'm going to need to sign on here. Okay, so it accepted my single sign-on. So I'm going to hit back. Select our downloads. Show all downloads. So this is a 1 gig download, so we'll go ahead and fast forward through this. I generally try and download them one at a time so as to get best throughput. Okay, that one finished, so now we'll go ahead and go after the infrastructure, which is the grid home, ASM cluster file system. So we'll go ahead and download that one, and we're going to say file, and again this one is 2.7 gigs, so it's going to take a few minutes. And again, you know, your mileage is going to vary depending on the speed of your internet connection. Even if you have a very fast internet connection, which is what I have, Oracle will throttle you down to this 10 to 20 megabits per second, so don't be surprised. Okay, so this one is just finishing up, and as soon as we're done, we'll go ahead and do the database home. And we're done. So let's go ahead ahead and do this one. And again, save file. Okay. So we're going to hit OK. And we can see that one started. And it's again 2.8 gigs, so it's going to take a few minutes. Okay, it just finished its download. So we're all set here. We've got our home, our grid, and we also have our client. So now what I'm going to suggest, close all tabs, sure, is that we go back in to our putty session. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to do a duplicate session on this, duplicate, and I'm going to log in as user Oracle, password's O, and directories, so cd downloads, and here we have our 3 files. So ls-alh u01 app Oracle. Okay, so what we're going to do here, /p u01 app Oracle stage. Oh, so it's unhappy with file permissions. So let's go ahead and resolve that now. Chown dash capital R / Oracle oinstall /u01, and now let's try that again, and no errors. So now we are going to cp star.zip, and we'll just copy and paste this. And as soon as it's done copying this, 3, 4, 6.5 gig, then we'll list out the directory. And it'll just magically pop up when it's done. Okay, there it is. So we copied our files 1.1, 2.9, and 2.7. And we could technically delete these downloads from home if we wanted, but I really don't see the value. Right now, I'm going to do a shutdown and halt, and we're going to take a snapshot. So let's go ahead and pull up our VNC. No. Pull up DB source and VirtualBox. Oh, where's Mr. Mouse? There's Mr. Mouse. Let's see what he's doing. Okay, I often get this, and basically it just says it needs to count up to 1 minute and 31 seconds sometimes for those processes to go away. Yep, VNC went away. So we're golden. So now we pull up our VirtualBox, and we'll go to snapshots, and we'll take a snapshot, and we'll put Oracle ASMlib installed and configured. So that'll be the end of this session. Again, if you found it useful, please like and subscribe, and tune into the next session where we'll go ahead and clone this source to target and to our swing bench machine, and change the host name and the IP address. So thanks and have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.